Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kaye. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick lays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for a Wednesday, February the 28th. It's leap year, so we get another day in February. Addison didn't really like that because her birthday comes one day later, March 2nd. So instead of Friday, her birthday will be on Saturday, and my little girl will be turning 11. Early happy birthday to my heart, my Ava girl, Addison Victoria Alsep. All right, let's get right to it. We've got a great show lined up in just a few minutes. We'll be joined by Jordan Kaye, the beat writer from Go Gamecocks and the State. We'll be talking about Gamecock men's basketball. We'll talk about what I'm getting ready to lead the show with, and that is that the Board of Trustees meeting has been called for tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. to approve an athletics contract. Well, we thought there was no more openings until Saturday when Kirby Smart and Georgia hire away newly hired Gamecock wide receivers coach James Coley, just 40 days on the job. He departs for Athens. And look, I'm not mad at him. And there's really two reasons. One, all college coaches are mercenaries. Okay, they are going to look out for number one. Okay, if you get offered a bunch more money to go to a much better program, you're going to take it. It doesn't matter if you've been there a week, a month, 3 months, a year. You're moving on. And so James Coley spent 4 years in Athens with Kirby Smart. He was on his first staff. Okay. He is a great recruiter. He was a play caller. He coached tight ends. He's going back as wide receiver. His children were very young. They've got friendships there. A lot of their formative years were in Athens. And let's face it, it's a much better job, just like Craig said. The only thing South Carolina and Georgia have in common is they are both in the Southeastern Conference. They do not live in the same neighborhood. They're not in the same stratosphere as programs. And I know that hurts, but it's true. South Carolina is, since 2013, been playing for 1 or 2 games over 500 or 1 or 2 games under 500. Georgia, since 2015, when they hired Kirby Smart, has been playing for SEC and national championships. And with Nick Saban's retirement, with all the upheaval at Ohio State, with their coaching staff, with Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL, Georgia is the top college football program in the country. And there's none of this commitment stuff, okay, with the transfer portal, with coaches always leaving, head coaches leaving for better jobs 1 or 2 years into a 5-year contract, assistant coaches leaving jobs. Now you've got group of 5 head coaches. They're leaving to take assistant coaching positions on Power 5 staffs. Alabama poached 2 sitting group of 5 head coaches. South Carolina poached Sean Elliott. Obviously, we know his reasons were bigger than football. It was a lot about family, but they lost like 22 players in the portal to Power 5 schools the last 2 years. They graduated a lot of players. They didn't finish well, even though they made a bowl game. I think they started like 6-1 and lost 4 of their last 5 to finish the season. He did all he could do there, and he's coming home. He's sleeping under the same roof and in the same bed with his wife, Summer. He's there with his 2 high school age children that are very important to him. James Coley is going to a place that will better his coaching career. If he wants to be an offensive coordinator again, if he wants to become a head coach. I mean, look at Georgia. I mean, you had a position coach. Their DB's coach became the head coach at Syracuse. Todd Monken left last year as their offensive coordinator to be the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. Brian McClendon, who, quite frankly, I think we would all agree is the worst wide receivers coach in the history of the University of South Carolina. He's going to the NFL, to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Why? I don't know. I don't think he could pick out a good wide receiver in a lineup. He could reach into a barrel full of great wide receivers and pull out a dud. But he's going to the NFL because of all the success he had at Georgia. Because he didn't do a damn thing at South Carolina, let's just call it like it is, except recruit a bunch of 6'3" guys that were slower than a turtle, basically. So Coley departs. Several names have been floated around. Fontel Mines from Virginia Tech, who was at James Madison, known for his recruiting prowess in the 7.57. Jason Barnes, a former Gamecock who's moved up the ladder. He's the wide receivers coach at Charlotte. Quinshaw Davis, who played at Gaffney, who's Steve Spurrier Jr., who was the worst recruiter as a wide receivers coach, maybe even worse than, dare I say, Brian McClendon, because he didn't want Alshon Jeffrey. He didn't want Torrey Gurley. He didn't want Ace Sanders. He didn't want Demir Bird. He didn't want Nicky Jones. Hell, Nick Jones cried after his official visit to South Carolina and went and visited Cincinnati, and Jay Graham and Brad Lawing had to talk him off the ledge. He also took Jody Fuller and Quentin Smith over Quinshaw Davis, who wound up going to North Carolina and being their all-time leading receiver in touchdown catches at the time. I mean, the guy could coach guys how to catch a ball. He was not a great teacher of route running, and he was a terrible evaluator and recruiter. So Quinshaw Davis, Kenny Dixon, who was Dan Mullen's wide receivers coach at Florida, who coached our little slot receiver from Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. He's been the Ravens' assistant quarterback coach for the last 3 years. Aaron Moorhead, who is a stud, was a stud recruiter in college at Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt. He was at Virginia Tech with Shane Beamer as an assistant coach. He's the wide receivers coach of the Eagles. There's also was one wild card name that I'm not going to mention that two reliable sources have mentioned to me. And so we all remember last time Shane Beamer was getting ready to hire a running backs coach, everybody thought it was going to be Newland Isaac, and then it wasn't. And so I'm not saying for sure, but all signs as we sit here today live at 1:11 Eastern Standard Time, all signs point to former NFL wide receivers coach and current Limestone head coach Mike Fury. No, not Nick Fury of the Avengers. Although when I first heard about it, I thought it was a joke. I got a text from a source saying that was a good possibility. And at first, my question was he in Shane Beamer's wedding too? And then, because I mean, we all know what happened after Mike Bobo left for $5.4 million guaranteed to Auburn. Shane Beamer made the worst hire of his tenure at South Carolina with Captain Dumbass. But the more I read, the more videos I watch, the more I hear about Mike Fury. Would be an out of the box hire. And certainly he is the guy that all signs are pointing to. Look, when you coach at Kentucky Christian and Limestone, so he's been the head coach at Limestone now twice, 2016 and 17. Then he left to go to the Bears. Okay. Then when Matt Nagy got fired, he came back to Limestone. He turned them from a loser to a winner the last 2 years. You look at this guy's demeanor. You look at his personality, how driven he is. You look at his background. Hell, the guy had 98 catches 1 year for the Detroit Lions. He played 10 years in the NFL Arena League. He was a record holder in the Arena League for 100 and plus receptions, like 1,574 yards, 46 touchdowns, which tied a single season record. He scored 288 points. Okay, then he went back to the NFL. He had his best season in 2006 with the Detroit Lions. He did play with the Rams. 98 receptions, 1,086 yards, 6 touchdowns. After his time in the NFL, he became the head coach at Kentucky Christian for 2 years. Then he went to Marshall, where he was the wide receivers coach from 2013 to 2015. Then he was the head coach at Limestone. Then he went with his former teammate from the New York Dragons, Matt Nagy, to the Chicago Bears. And when I first saw that, I thought, well, he must have overlapped with Dow Loggins, but he didn't. But he spent 4 years in the National Football League, so you've got another NFL, potentially pedigree guy who can say, hey, I know what it takes to get the NFL. I played in the NFL. I've coached in the NFL. That worked out pretty good for Sterling Lucas, okay? Now, look, James Coley was a shark. He had been at Blue Bloods. And so we've seen guys like him not have success at South Carolina. We've seen guys like Fury, who really doesn't have Power 5 recruiting experience, like Sterling Lucas, like Bobby Bentley, turn into pretty doggone good recruiters. And so the proof will be in the pudding. But this guy has now spent 4 years coaching the state of South Carolina, mining probably every high school in the state for talent. So this is a guy that is very familiar with the high school coaches, and the high school coaches in the state of South Carolina are very familiar with him. So he puts on the garnet and black Under Armour polo and walks into high schools. He's got name recognition, just like Bobby Bentley had. Even though when Will Muschamp hired him, half the coaches in the state loved Bobby Bentley, and the other half wouldn't pour water on him to put him out if he was on fire because he ran the score up on him. But Bobby Bentley turned into a great recruiter. Sterling Lucas turned into a great recruiter. Brian McClendon and Lance Thompson, not so much. Travaris Robinson, probably the most overrated recruiter and coach ever, right there with Brian McClendon. At least Lance Thompson developed guys and coached his guys up. Those two dudes really didn't do much, even though J.C. Horn and Israel McQuamu swear by T-Rob. They can have him. I like Torian Gray better. So we'll see if that's the choice. There's a big name that, like I said, maybe this is a smoke screen. I doubt it, because I just couldn't see that guy leaving his school for South Carolina. All right, men's basketball. They had the midweek off after losing a pair of games 2 weeks ago, dropping from number 11 to 20, back up to number 18 this week. They had a resounding road win over Ole Miss on Saturday. We will discuss that. 72-59 in a game that really was never in doubt the last 30 minutes of the game. South Carolina will play at College Station tonight against a slumping A&M team. They are 15-12, 6-8 in the SEC. They are losers of 4 straight games. Okay, they are still number 57 in the net, and so this could be another quad 1 win, and it could be South Carolina's 6th SEC road win if they're able to win tonight. They got 5 road wins. You get another quad 1 victory if you can win tonight, and quite frankly, every one of South Carolina's games the rest of the season will be quad 1 wins. In the Gamecocks are 22-5. They are 10-4 in the SEC. They'll be going for their 23rd win and their 11th win. And boy, if you could find a way to beat A&M tonight and beat Florida and split your last 4, you would be 24-7, and you would be 13-5, which would probably be a top 4 seed in the SEC, which would move you up in the bracketology. We will definitely get into Flanagan's UFC elbow to the face of Zachary Davis, who's very lucky he didn't get a broken orbital bone, get his eye knocked out of his head, get a broken jaw, a broken chin, or, a concussion. I mean, on the street, that you'd get locked up for assault and battery. That was an egregiously dirty play, and Flanagan should have been suspended, in my opinion. All right, the bracketology, both Joe Lenardi and Jerry Palm have the Gamecocks a 6th seed. Lenardi has South Carolina playing 11th seed Providence and Pittsburgh. Jerry Palm has the Gamecocks playing Princeton in the 6-11 game in Salt Lake City. Every one of these games, the metrics, even if you lose a quad 1 game, like if you lose to Tennessee, if you lose at Mississippi State, you're probably still going up in the net because you're playing top 30 quad 1 teams, and anything past 10 points doesn't count. Gamecock women's basketball playing without their leading scorer and rebounder and candidate to be SEC Player of the Year, to be All-American, to be the National Defensive Player of the Year, Camila Cardoso. All the Gamecocks have done was boat race Alabama 72-44 and Kentucky 103-55 to completely wrap up. No shared title. The Gamecocks are 14-0. They are 27-0 overall, but 14-0 in the SEC. They are the number one seed. They're the regular season champions for the 8th time. And Dawn Staley gave Cardoso rest because she played on that Sunday game with South Carolina, then flew to Brazil. They were already there, played 3 games in 3 days, flew back, played against Tennessee in a game that was a fourth quarter game. It was tied going into the fourth quarter. She was exhausted. Dawn Staley gave her rest. Well, what has it done? Clearly the Gamecocks didn't need her to win those games. What they did was they got more minutes and they moved Ashlyn Watkins into the starting lineup. More experience for her, more minutes for her, more experience for Sanaya Fagan, more minutes, double-digit games by Fagan the last 2 games, and even Sakima Walker getting a lot of runs. So against Alabama, Watkins was 6 of 8 from the free throw line. She had 14 points and 10 rebounds and 3 block shots. Okay. Sanaya Fagan, she had 10 points and 7 rebounds. So she got to play. The Gamecocks were unbelievable from the free throw line and from the field in that game against Alabama. I mean, they were 8 for 12 from 3. They shot 64.4% for the game. In the first half, South Carolina was just on fire. I mean, they were 19 for 21 from the free throw line. They broke the clock on the road in Lexington. Watkins, 6 of 6 from the field, 1 of 1 from the free throw line, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. Okay, Chloe Kitts with a double-double. She had 10 points and 12 rebounds. Fagan, she was second on the team in scoring third on the team with 16 points, 6 of 12, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. She had 5 block shots in that game. You know, you saw Tessa Johnson shooting the ball against Alabama and against Kentucky from distance. Full Wiley, she had 17 points and was 12 for 12 from the free throw line. A big reason why South Carolina went 19 of 21 from the free throw line. And, I mean, Tahina Powell getting back on track from 3, staying hot. So, you know, the Gamecocks are building depth and quality depth. Last night, Joyce Edwards led Camden to the lower state championship. They will now advance to the state championship game. She's a candidate for the Naismith National High School Player of the Year, and with her stats, she's probably going to win it if Camden wins a state. If not, she's going to be right there for it. And last Friday night at Sarah Strong's senior night, you had the Gamecocks' entire coaching staff there. UConn was there. LSU was there. Duke was there, and North Carolina was there. So South Carolina is going to try to get her in for an official visit. But man, you could have the top 2 players in the country, both from the Carolinas, as South Carolina next year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but when Dawn Staley and her staff devote so much time to personally recruiting a player, and you have the family connections and the fact that Dawn Staley and Allison Feaster were teammates together with the Charlotte Sting. Dawn Staley is the only African-American, well, Carol Lawson, who will probably be leaving to go to Tennessee when Kelly Harper gets fired, because they were right there with South Carolina and right there with LSU going into the 4th quarter in Rocky Top, where Pat Summitt won championships, and they just melted down. And they've lost a bunch of games they had no business losing. And I don't think they got the patience, because she didn't even sign anybody, I don't think, in the early signing period. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, but, maybe she wants to go someplace where she can start immediately and lead the team immediately and be the star of the team immediately. I don't know what her aspirations are. If she wants to win championships, I think I'd team up with Joyce Edwards and Maddie McDaniel, Adele Tack, and have the number 1 recruiting class in the country to come in with other number 1 or number 2 ranked recruiting classes in the country and a bunch more players and win championships. So that would make sense to me. Gamecock Baseball, number 21 in the polls. They're 8-1. The only blip Saturday, they did lose to Belmont 11-2, but they took 2 out of 3. They dispatched Gardner Webb yesterday with a 5-run 5th inning and won 7-1. They take on number 10 Clemson this weekend. Okay, and so what are you judged on, Mark Kingston? What is every South Carolina baseball coach judged on? 1, do you beat Clemson? And number 2, do you get to Omaha? What do you do in the postseason? And so South Carolina's pitching has been very good. They'll need a great outing from Eli Jones on Friday. Okay, they get the Saturday game. It's basically like a home game. Friday's game is at Founders Park. Saturday is at Segra Park right there in Columbia. Then Sunday, the series finale will be in Clemson. If you're the Gamecocks, you definitely want to win 2 out of 3 here. We'll get into that as well. Yeah, I mean, that ball Gavin Cassis hit yesterday, it is still rolling. So those are your Nana's Porch news notes and headlines. Jump into Nana's Porch chat box. We've already got several comments in the chat box. Nobody's really blaming James Coley. I can't be mad at him. I do, another head coach, Dale McGee, just left Georgia. He was the high school coach at Columbus Carver High School, which is where I'm pretty sure Tank Bixby played. They've had a bunch of dudes go through there. He's now the new head coach at Georgia State. Josh Crawford, who was the wide receivers coach at Georgia Tech, was a guy looked like South Carolina may go after him. He had also coached running backs. He was also a high school coach. He will be the running backs coach at Georgia to replace Dale McGee. So, hey, great to see Lance. Great to see WJM 4-1, Craig, everybody that's in the Nana's Porch chat box. These news, notes, and headlines brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company, Nana's Porch, servicing the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. Whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, maybe it's a big backyard bash with the whole hog barbecue, whatever your catering needs, Nana's Porch has got you covered. You want to bring in a food trailer? Nana's Porch is a go-to, voted among the top 3 food trailers in Charlotte by the local newspaper poll. And as we all know, their award-winning pimento cheese voted both number 1 and number 2, both flavors, in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association. The best jalapeno pimento cheese I've ever had in my life. It's smoky jalapeno. When they smoke the jalapenos, it takes kind of the edge off the burn. It's not like they just chop them up raw and put them in there. Fantastic. The regular flavor as well. So get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne at Nana's Porch. That's NANASPORCH.com. I urge you to support this Gamecock owned and operated business. If you live anywhere, Lancaster, Rock Hill, Fort Mill, Indian Land, Charlotte, Lincolnton, Mount Holly, Denver, Concord, even in that Monroe area, Nana's Porch, a must for any catering event. All right, let's bring in our good friend from Go Gamecocks and the state, Jordan Kaye. Put your comments, your questions in the Nana's Porch chat box. Okay, but before we go to that, let me tell you about my good friend, Brent Skinner, the owner and operator of BP Skinner Clothiers. Okay, located in the heart of Columbia's historic Vista at 1005 Gervais Street. Okay, Brent has been building relationships and servicing clients for the last 17 years. He's a graduate of the University of South Carolina. He opened BP Skinner Clothiers in 2012 and is now considered one of the top clothiers in the entire country. Okay, Brent believes in providing his clients with the best quality clothing at a fair price. His attention to detail and his commitment to ensuring his customers look and feel their absolute best set him apart. He's one of the top clothiers in the industry. Let him put his reliable experience in custom menswear to work for you. Maybe you've got a wedding, a class reunion coming up, you're slimming down, you don't want something just off the rack. BP Skinner Clothiers. Brent and Marlo, his wife, started this business. It is a Gamecock family owned and operated business. His main dude on the floor, Josh Colvin, is the absolute best at what he does. And their excellence is their passion at BP Skinner Clothier, whether it's a sport coat, dress shirts, ties, bow ties, slacks, casual clothes, an entire Gamecock line of polos, pullovers, caps, visors, okay, socks, shoes, jackets, suits. They've got you covered at BP Skinner Clothier, located at 1005 Gervais Street in the Vista. All right. So leave your questions for me in the Nana's Porch chat box, and we certainly appreciate all that Brent Skinner does for the Gamecocks and has done. I urge you to support these Gamecock-owned and operated businesses. Here is my interview with Jordan. And we welcome back onto the program Jordan Kaye, beat writer for GoGamecocks.com and the state. We like him because he's not a North Carolina or a Georgia or a Florida homer like a lot of local media. So, good morning. How's everything going?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well, about as well as Lamont Paris and the Gamecock men's basketball team.
That is really well.
Yes, it is better than expected.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that's what we keep mentioning that every time. But Gamecocks had that bad week a couple weeks ago, getting boat raced by 40 at Auburn.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul losing to Auburn. You didn't want to get blown out by 40. Then you come home, you lead a really very mediocre LSU team by 9, or maybe it's 7. You come out and score the first 9 points of the second half to go up by 16.
Yeah.
You got a 10-point lead with 8 minutes and change to go, and you found a way to lose that game. And I thought there was kind of a course correction there. One of my favorite Lou Holtz quotes is, "Things are never as good as they seem. Things are never as bad as they seem. The truth is always somewhere in the middle." South Carolina had risen to number 11 in the polls, which is great. You love to see that. But at the same time, with my basketball background, this was clearly not the 11th most talented roster in college basketball. They kind of course corrected, were ranked 20th, moved up 2 places this week to 18 in both polls after a dominant SEC road win, their 5th SEC road win over Ole Miss. And they did it really with just defense and guts, and Zach Davis having the game of his life.
And enduring a blow to the chin. Holy cow. I don't know how that didn't get the guy from Ole Miss suspended for about a year. Holy cow.
Yes. I mean, look, what's the difference between that and a punch? Alan Flanagan, who's a really good player and who really spearheaded that furious comeback in the game earlier in the month in Columbia. I mean, there's nothing really you can see even before that.
Unless
him basically throw a punch with his elbow.
Unless there was a different angle that we didn't see that the SC refs and SC offs had that we didn't. Yeah, I don't. That should have been a 5-game suspension. That is no different. Talking back with your right hand and throwing an uppercut to the chin. I mean, that is a vicious hit to with the elbow, UFC type move. So, I mean, that was the thing I took away from that game. Like, holy cow, South Carolina's got to overcome, not just a bad week, but elbows to the chin. They're doing okay. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I look back at that week, and really no one was probably winning that Auburn game. I mean, it was a packed house. Bo Jackson's in the stands. The LSU one was up 30s, where Lamont was screaming at his team to foul They don't foul. They have one of the worst inbound passes to BJ Mack trapped in the corner. There's a jump ball. The possession arrow isn't going their way. I mean, it was 10 different things that had to go wrong, and they all went wrong. That's one of those that, you hope you don't have, but usually every team's got one of them. And then this Ole Miss one, after about a week off, was kind of the litmus test of like, okay, was this a bad week or a sign of something to come? And kudos to South Carolina. I mean, like you're saying, they played phenomenal defense against an Ole Miss team that gave them trouble in Columbia a little bit and held them pretty low, and were able to kind of right the course.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. Honestly, I thought the open date came at the perfect time after those two losses, right? Because it they had not had an off week. They had played, 12 or 13 consecutive SEC games.
Yeah.
Without the deepest roster. I mean, they basically had gone to like an 8-man rotation pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They got to sharpen the saw a little bit, work on themselves, go back to some basic fundamentals, get a little rest, and regroup. And wow, did it show Saturday at Ole Miss. Ole Miss shoots 33% for the game and just 3 of 16 from 3, which is like 18.8%.
Yeah.
And South Carolina dominated them on the glass, 44-34. More second chance points, despite the fact that they have that Jamarian dude that's 7'5" and Cisse. And Cisse had a good game until he went to the free throw line. He was
It was like
had sort of a hack-a-shack strategy there.
I thought they should have just kept fouling him every second.
Yeah, he was 1 for 7 or 1 for 8 from the free throw line.
Yeah.
But the Gamecocks, like the last 7 minutes of the half, they went on like a 13-1 run to go up 36-20. Flanagan got that bucket right before the half, and then less than 4 minutes into the second half, he throws, like you said, a UFC punch, which on the street, that's assault and battery. I mean,
yeah. Yes, it is.
Zachary Davis was very fortunate that he didn't suffer like a fractured orbital bone or a broken jaw or a broken nose.
And Zach Davis had, that's a guy who steps up in a late February game on the road in Oxford. Those are the types of things, if you're going to make a run in March, that you need those guys down the bench to at least be capable of giving you some really good minutes and having an occasional great game. We've seen the kind of emergence of a lot of the big men. Josiah Gray's had a ton of great games. There's been guys who have stepped up. If you can add Zachary Davis to that mix, that's the type of thing you need to make a March run.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You look at him, 14 points and 9 rebounds. I think that's about a career day for him, 6 of 8 from the free throw line. He had 5 offensive rebounds, which was really big.
Yep.
Because Colin Murray Boyles gets in early foul trouble. Even after he got 2, Paris left him in. He picked up his 3rd foul, I think, like 6 minutes in. That's all you get out of him.
Yep.
BJ Mack was not great in the first half. Josh Gray was not great. He had to play Stephen Clark.
Yeah.
And Michie Johnson goes 1 for 11. if you would have told me all of those things, Michie Johnson goes 1 for 11, Colin Murray Boyles plays 6 minutes in the first half, no Miles Stubbe, not a good Josh Gray game, and BJ Mack, I think, only had like 3 or 5 points in the first half. He finishes with a game high 17 points on a big second half. Murray Boyles finishes with 12. Zach Davis 14, and Jacoby Wright, big game off the bench for him, 4 of 7 and 2 of 3 from downtown, including one in that run to end the first half, and then one when Ole Miss was starting to chip away to really push the lead back up. And I don't think after that, South Carolina, their lead was pretty much double digits. The half, as many as 17 on 3 separate occasions.
I know. The only thing I was thinking is when you get that big lead around halftime, early in the second half, I kind of started getting a little flashbacks to the LSU game of like, okay, let's see if they've learned their lesson. Let's see if they can hold on to these big leads. And kudos to them. I mean, they didn't really let it get even close, which is a huge jump forward, and I'm sure kind of gets rid of some of the demons they had from last week.
Yeah, I mean, great point, and no doubt about it. I thought it was big because they did kind of chip into that lead, and it got down to 9 points a few times.
But it never got to like a 2-score game.
Right. But every time it seems South Carolina would answer and get it back to double digits. Then, they'd get a couple of baskets in a row, build the lead, and they were able to hold the lead. Matthew Morrell, he got into early foul trouble, so he didn't play much in the first half. And then Flanagan, who for my money is their best player and certainly their best, UFC guy, if he ever chooses to go into that. I'm still, he plays less than 4 minutes, like 3 minutes and 7 seconds. And why did they have to? I don't know why with 3 officials they had to go to the monitor on that. The baseline official has a full view of it and just calls an offensive foul. Yeah. And then they go to the monitor. But I was kind of surprised he didn't get a suspension from the league office, because to me, there's really no difference in that throwing a punch.
I thought so too. At least 3 games, 2 games, something that shows like, okay, this is not okay. I mean, I wonder if the SEC had a different view of it. I wonder if there was maybe did Zach Davis do something to, instigate it? I don't think so. Watching the game, I feel like they would have shown it on the cameras, but that was a weird one. Unless Ole Miss just did some incredible lobbying in the SEC offices.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it warranted at least a 2-game suspension.
I did too.
There's nothing, like that. Certainly, that's a flagrant upgrade from a flagrant 1. I thought that should have been a suspension, but South Carolina, they were able to get it done. But I mean, that was just really wild to see that egregious of an action in a basketball game. I mean, and meanwhile, not to really get off subject, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Okay, so Wake Forest storms the floor against Duke, right? Yeah. Then Filipowski or whatever, the big freshman for Duke, he hurts his ankle or whatever. It kind of looks like he was being aggressive. And then, of course, you got Jay Williams, you got Jay Billis, who I agree with about 99% of the time. Yeah. Talking about outlawing the storming of
that was That was insane. Or
I
the whole
mean,
thing of him saying, we need to detain the people on the court. I was like, what?
are you serious?
That was
I
crazy.
mean, that is the wussification of sports continues, in my opinion. Like everybody gets a participation medal or trophy. Oh, there's no losers. Well, hey, if you were at the South Carolina-Kentucky game, Calipari knew they were storming the floor when the game was over. He had his players leaving the floor or going towards right their locker room and shook hands, and the melee ensued. Okay, maybe, I mean, we are talking about Duke. Okay, you're supposed to be pretty smart to be the head coach there and to get into school to play there. Maybe you need to be thinking about those things, okay, because I'm sorry, Caitlin Clark clearly flopped at Ohio State. There's no defense of her. The Duke guy, I can kind of see it, and I know, in football games, in fisticuffs, even with coaches involved and stuff. And so I'm just saying, what happened in between the lines to Zachary Davis was a lot worse than anything I've ever seen or heard about of fans storming a basketball court.
I could not agree more. The Caitlin Clark thing was a joke. She totally flopped on that.
Yes, she did.
Trying to make a big deal out of that was one of the silliest things that I've seen. People like, oh, outlaw it. I'm like, she hardly got touched. She was probably pissed off because they lost. And yeah, the Kyle Filipowski, look at everyone else on Duke. Everyone else understood the assignment. They got over to the bench. They knew what was happening. He was on kind of like the far side of the court. So I give him a little credit there, but man, he had no urgency to get over to the bench. It's like, that's what happens. Could Wake Forest have called a timeout? Sure. That should have happened. That's what happened with South Carolina. You call a timeout, let the guys go get over to the bench. Wake Forest clearly had, this doesn't happen very often out there. They had no security plan. Blame Wake Forest. Don't blame court storming as the whole thing. South Carolina had a perfect security plan. They got Kentucky off the floor. They had cops for the players, cops for the security guards. They got everyone off the floor, and there was no big deal. The only problem we run into is if there's a buzzer beater over the number one team in the country or something, and people rush, and there's no way of knowing. But even then, you have your security guards stationed by the stanchion, kind of going after some of the players. I mean, this is not the craziest thing ever. If we start outlawing this and we're having NIL becoming pay for play, I mean, what is college athletics? This is the stuff that's fun. These are the moments where when you're a college kid that you're going to remember 10, 20 years down the road. These are the moments when colleges are, they look at their alumni base and they see who became a doctor and lawyer. They're going to be like, hey, don't you remember that time you rushed the court? Don't you want to keep supporting our student athletes? They're going to keep going after those people for money. They want them to remember these moments, and to try and outlaw it is silly to me. Everyone keeps saying, oh my gosh, we're so close to something just terrible happening. It's like court storming's been around for 30 years and nothing really that bad has happened. I mean, the worst thing is like some stupid kids get in the face of a guy and he punches them or something. Like, that's the worst thing we've had in 30 years of this, especially with football and basketball, and before there was even crazy security measures. I think it would be silly reaction to try and outlaw it, and the good far outweighs the bad. I don't know what your thoughts. It sounds like you kind of agree with that.
No, I totally agree. And you talk about, years later, you look at somebody who was a student and they storm the court. Well, now they're a doctor or a lawyer. And so that takes me back to the late 80s, and South Carolina's playing Louisville, and South Carolina has a big lead, and there's like a fight breaks out. There's technicals on the bench. George Felton wound up getting ejected, and a student wound up getting a technical foul behind the bench. And he'll be listening to this later or watching this later on. Friend of the show and a longtime patron. And he actually caused South Carolina to lose that game. It lives in infamy. That's one of the more crazy things. I think it went to overtime, or maybe they shot enough free throws. I mean, it was in the 80s, so even my memory doesn't really get it. But yeah, I'm sorry. Talking about arresting all the students,
that was crazy,
they're on the floor, or saying, well, you forfeit your right to go to any more athletic events. I mean, these people on ESPN need to get a grip, okay? Remember when you were 19, not now that you're 49 or 50.
Yeah.
Like, Jay Billis, who, by the way, is brilliant and is right over 99% of the time, in my opinion. A few years ago, I would have certainly been for appointing him as the czar of college basketball. No more after that. No soup for you. That was really a weak take. But, so back to the Gamecocks tonight. Another huge opportunity. And by the way, at Ole Miss, that was a quad one win. The Gamecocks jumped like 10 spots in the net.
Yeah.
With a quad one road win. Tonight, they have another opportunity to get a quad one. Texas A&M is reeling. They lost like three losers of four straight and got boat raced by 35 by my guy Rick Barnes on Rocky Top on Saturday.
Yeah.
They dropped to 15-12, 6-8 in the SEC, and you get a chance to get another quad. I mean, every one of these games for South Carolina right now is going to be a quad one game. Florida is number 28 in the net. On the road, you just need top 75, right?
Yeah.
A&M 57. Mississippi State currently they've been hovering from like 28 to 36. They're 30. And so before we really get into the A&M game, is South Carolina a lock at 22-5 with 11 conference wins to make the NCAA tournament, in your opinion?
Yeah, I thought they were locked 2 weeks ago. I mean, you look around the country, they have so much room to drop. It's crazy, especially with their schedule. They don't have that really bad game that's like going to kill them in the metrics. So as long as they can kind of avoid losing every single game, even then they might still get in at 22 wins. I think they're fine. I don't think there's any reason to worry. And with as many quad one wins as they have coming up, even if they win 1 to 3 of them, holy cow, that's just going to keep helping their metrics. I kind of couldn't believe how many quad ones they have. Like Texas A&M to me is like, it's so silly that they're still a quad one because they're a shell of the team they were in November, December. But that's one of those where you just kind of take advantage of like, hey, yeah, we'll take another quad one win. Now, I think it's possible like Texas A&M drops 20 spots over the next 2 weeks, and it's a really good quad too. South Carolina, the metrics with the wins they have in the SEC and the 5 SEC road wins, their metrics are to the point where I think they're completely fine and in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, so A&M, they are tied for the most quad one wins in the SEC
because they had a really good non-conference schedule. I mean, they loaded up and they were really good in the non-con. So that was one of those things. I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat, and South Carolina said, "Hey, we're gonna build up throughout the season. We're gonna make sure that our non-conference schedule isn't a murderer's row. We'll get some wins. We'll build confidence. We'll go into SEC play feeling good. Texas A&M is like, hey, we might be a bubble team. We've got to load our non-conference schedule. Let's get some really impressive wins. And then when tournament time comes, we're going to be looked at favorably for that. Both might end up working out pretty well. We'll see how far A&M slides. But, yeah, there's just different ways of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it'd be optimal if you're South Carolina, if you could get a split in these final four. If you could go 2-2, like I'll say, if you could get that win tonight and then get Florida at home, right? Like I think Tennessee, that's going to be a revenge game for them. I mean, look, it will be a crazy, bonkers atmosphere.
Yeah.
For the men, they'll finally experience what the women have been experiencing in Colonial Life Arena for the last several years under Dawn Staley.
Yeah.
I can't imagine both of those games not being sellouts.
I agree.
Like I would have another blackout and a whiteout for those two games because, I mean, those are really big games. You're talking about going from 11 or 12 wins to maybe 13, going 13-5 and finishing the top 4 seeds and getting a double bye. Although to me, if I'm South Carolina, I really wouldn't mind finishing 5th because then I probably get a chance to get an easier opponent in the SEC tournament than getting the double bye and then having to maybe play Auburn, right? Alabama.
I see what you're saying.
In the semifinals.
It's not a bad idea. I see what you're saying. Is try and just avoid the. But even if you're a 5, aren't you? You're going to have to play. You're going to eventually have to play in the quarterfinals of 1 or 2, right?
Well, not in the quarterfinals.
Who does the 5 play in the quarters?
So I think it'd be the winner of like 12 and 14. I think 12 and 14 play and 11 and 13 play. So if you're the 5, your first game is going to be against one of the lower seeded teams.
Oh yeah, game 4 winner. You play.
Then, right, that's
play
the quarterfinals. Then you get to the semifinals.
Yes.
Then, then you're playing probably
the number 1 seed. You're playing the number 1 seed in the semifinals.
Or it could be the 4 seed, and then in the finals.
Oh, you're right.
Well, yeah, it could be 1 and 4.
No. So if you're the 5 seed, you play the 12 versus. You play the winner of the 12-13 game on Thursday. Then on Friday in the quarterfinals, you play the number 4 seed. Then if you win that game, you play the winner of the number 1 overall seed versus the winner of the 8-9 or the winner of 8-9. So you're probably going to play the number 1 seed in the semifinals if we're doing what we said there, right. Which isn't the worst thing. I mean, there's plenty of worse things. The problem is I don't think South Carolina is going to get there. And so you're looking at maybe them playing, who would it be here? The number 5 seed probably in that first round.
Yeah.
Which I guess doesn't change a whole lot, but.
I mean, it's probably Florida as things stand right now. Like it'd probably be a rematch game.
Yeah. So
if you're 4 or 5,
yes.
That's probably who you're going to end up playing.
Yeah.
First. Yeah.
Totally agree. The only thing is, I wouldn't want to be the number 3 seed. You're playing, you got to play the number 6 team late at night, and then you're playing the number 2 seed. I mean, that's kind of tough, but I don't think it. I think they'll be fine regardless. I mean, it's going to be a tough first round game, no doubt.
So A&M leads the nation in offensive rebounding, 18 or 17.8 per game. They've had 20 or more offensive rebounds 8 times. Anderson Garcia is just a Windex guy. He leads their team in offensive rebounding. And you look at it, their starting backcourt, Wade Taylor the fourth and Tyrese Radford, that's their 2 leading scorers. Jace Carter has been playing well. And a familiar name for Gamecock fans, Wildens Levesque, has worked his way into the starting lineup. He doesn't play that much, but he starts, maybe because for the jump ball.
They put him out there for one possession, call a timeout.
I mean, he's only playing like 10 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And that's in all games. In SEC games, he's playing under 10 minutes a game. But, Henry Coleman, I think he may have missed some games. Jace Carter has missed some games with injury. Solomon Washington has missed some games. And so they've not been the same team. South Carolina will be going for their 4th straight win at College Station in this series. They lead the overall series 9-5. I think Las Vegas has the Gamecocks as a 4.5-point underdog, which to me is kind of like being a field goal on the road is basically the teams they feel are evenly matched. Mm-hmm. Certainly South Carolina is playing better basketball, but you need to continue that momentum and play like you did at Ole Miss and not like you did at Auburn, but a midweek environment with Texas A&M slumping, even with Buzz Williams. To me, this may be the most winnable game left on the schedule, even with the 2 home games. I mean, maybe Florida. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say Florida at home is probably a little more winnable just because you're having the home atmosphere. It's going to be pretty rowdy that night, but I kind of agree with you. This is a Texas A&M team that has lost the last 4. I mean, they played some good teams, like Tennessee was in there, but they lost to Vanderbilt, they lost to Arkansas. I mean, these are teams that you got to be kind of beaten a little bit. And so, yeah, I kind of agree with you. This could be one of their easiest games. Definitely one you got to kind of come out and make a statement with if you're like in the Ole Miss game. Get out early, silence the crowd, roll to a non-dramatic win.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling it probably will be dramatic, but we'll certainly see what happens later tonight. So over the weekend, James Coley, we barely knew you, James. I've said this for years. College coaches are mercenaries, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
they'll hire guns, and I can't be mad at him. He spent 4 years at Georgia. His kids were very young. They have friends. They have a lot of connections there. I think Kirby's paying him around $800,000 a year.
Yeah.
And let's face it, at this point, the only thing South Carolina and Georgia have in common is they're both members of the SEC. They're not the same neighborhood or even the same stratosphere as programs. I mean, just call it like it is. South Carolina's, 1 or 2 games either way of 6-6 since Spurrier. That's where they've been. Georgia, especially now with Nick Saban retiring in Alabama, Georgia is the top program. Harbaugh going to the NFL. Kirby Smart is clearly running the top program in college football. They're playing for championships, so I can't really blame Coley. It's at the same time, it's unfortunate for Beamer because you had a big-time coach with coordinator experience and an absolute shark on the recruiting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know what Coley's career aspirations were, but let's even take out the whole national championships part. Let's take out the salary part. If James Coley wants to become a offensive coordinator again, as he was in Georgia before being replaced by Todd Monken, if he wants to become a head coach at any point, going to Georgia is a pretty good bet. Let's just look at who they've had the last couple of years. All right, we got Todd Monken, who goes and becomes the offensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens. That's a pretty good step up. We've got Fran Brown, who's a position coach on the defense, is the head coach at Syracuse. We got Del McGee, who becomes the head coach at Georgia State. We've got a wide receivers coach who's going to the NFL. I mean, everyone at Georgia is thought upon so highly because they're in a winning culture around Kirby Smart that they are looked upon so favorably by the rest of the coaching community. I don't know if James Coley is doing this to settle down in Athens or if he is trying to move on in his career. But either way, I'm with you. You can't blame the guy. The only thing that sucks is just the timing of it. And really, I mean, it's for him, I assume it's just pulling the Band-Aid off. It's like, gosh, this is going to suck for about 3 days. Like, this is really going to suck to call Shane Beamer and tell him I'm gone. This is really going to suck when every person under the sun is dragging my name around social media. This is going to suck for a little bit, but I'm going to be really happy I did this in 6 months because I'm at Georgia. And I imagine that's what he's thinking. I mean, all of us have had to, leave jobs at some point, and it doesn't matter when the timing is. If it's 2 months or 2 years, it always sucks to go to your boss and be like, if you like the job, be like, man, hey, sorry, I got to move on. So I don't blame him like you're saying, but yeah, it's very funny to me that it's 40 years or 40 days that he was in the job. And at this point, you're right. Coaches are mercenaries, and any of them trying to preach loyalty to any of these kids who are in the transfer kick rocks, because that falls on pretty deaf ears right about now.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think you can get upset with a guy. I mean, last year, the one glaring thing that I still see, and a lot of Gamecocks still see about Shane Beamer, is he takes it very personally, which I think in a way you kind of like, but at the same time, when Jimmy Lindsey can go to LSU, even though ironically he lasted less than a year and got fired for, almost doubling his salary. Okay. Mike Bobo, after taking a 1-year contract for $1 million, gets offered a 3-year contract for $1.8 million. A guy in his 50s with health issues. I mean, I don't see the point in being upset about that. That's life-changing money.
Mm-hmm.
Almost
no,
over $5 million to $5.4 million guaranteed versus $1 million guaranteed, or
and if you're
whatever.
Yeah. And if you're a South Carolina fan, you can't be happy that they grabbed Sean Elliott from Georgia State and be mad they lost James Coley to Georgia. I mean, this is how things work. South Carolina's poaching coaches, just like Georgia's poaching coaches. Like this is the cycle we live in, and you can't be happy when you poach and then be pissed when you get poached. It's kind of like the transfer portal a little bit.
So all signs as of right now, point to Limestone head coach Mike Fury, kind of out of the box.
A weird one.
To me, it's kind of, when I first heard about it yesterday, I was like, well, was this guy in his wedding too? And then I dug in and did some research. Well, I mean, this guy played in the National Football League. He had a 98 catch season with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
He coached at Marshall. He, really turned Limestone around. And I mean, you just look at it, and the guy worked with Nagy for 4 years.
I don't know if I want to. I don't know if that's a great. I don't know if that's awesome to put on your resume.
Super Bowl offensive coordinator for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Bears' tenure was a little rough, but yes.
Anybody disputes his offensive pedigree.
No, that's true.
Work out.
That's true. Good point. I thought he had initially when I saw it too. I was like, did he overlap with Dowell Loggins in Chicago? And
I had the same thought.
They didn't know it was 1 year off. So I mean, I assume that Dowell had to have known people who knew him. Just being a year removed, that he's going to talk to coaches. So I have to imagine Dowell Loggins called some of his buddies from the Bears and, hey, what did you like about this guy? Or even heard stories back then in 2018. But yeah, like you, I was kind of looking around like, what is the connection here? Granted, Limestone's in Gaffney. That's not super far, but it's not like I've heard Shane Beamer talk about, the Limestone football program like he has, with even, Allen and Benedict. So yeah, it was really, I mean, if this is the guy, I mean, the board meeting's called for, what do we got? 8:30, 8:45 tomorrow morning. They're likely to approve a contract. All signs are pointing to him. If he's the guy, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, we'll see, but I've seen a lot of people kind of, question his recruiting efforts. He's been a college coach. He's been at Marshall. And here's the other thing. Like Sterling Lucas, some of these guys, Joe DeCamillis, like they didn't have any recruiting experience. I think sometimes you can kind of know based off talking to a guy. I mean, Shane Beaver talks about it a lot. Like recruiting is your relationships and your effort. How much effort are you going to put into it is how good you're going to be. So I don't think that he thinks recruiting is this thing that needs years and years of seasoning. It sounds to me like he's like, if you've got a good personality and you're going to put in the effort, then, we think you're a good recruiter. And heck, he's been at Limestone recruiting. Like that deserves some sort of cachet. I know people are going to say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's Limestone. The guy was still recruiting every day. Like, it's not like he doesn't understand how the process works. Think about you're selling a beat up, 99 Toyota Camaro or Toyota Camry. And now you got a nice like 2014 like Charger. It's like, okay, it's going to be a little easier to sell. That's what he could be going from. You're selling Limestone to now you're selling South Carolina. It's a little easier. So I don't know.
Kentucky Christian as well. I mean,
oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Some of these schools I've never even heard of. Like I don't know about you. I mean, I'm new here, but I was like, where you could have told me any state, any country where Limestone was, I would have believed you. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, now I'm very familiar.
Okay. I figured
with Limestone. So, you brought up Sterling Lucas. Bobby Bentley is another guy who hired. He was a longtime high school coach. He had coached at Presbyterian College, but I knew him. We'd kind of grown up in the coaching ranks in South Carolina. He said, look, when I got hired to be the running backs coach at South Carolina, the running backs coach has got to be one of the best recruiters on the staff.
Yeah.
And he's like, I knew if I wasn't a great recruiter and didn't work my behind off, I would not last long. And Bobby Bentley turned into one of the best recruiters Will Muschamp had, much better than Lance Thompson, National Recruiter of the Year at Alabama. Brian McClendon, who I still don't know why Tampa Bay hired him. Most fans will still say he is the worst wide receivers coach in the history of the University of South Carolina. I mean, I guess they draft the guys and they give you the guys and then you coach them. His problem was I don't think he could have picked a great wide receiver out of a lineup. Like he could pick one out of a barrel full of great wide receivers. Every guy he wanted was 6'3", 190, and was slower than an ox. So it appears from the people I've talked to and from the stuff I've seen, the interviews, that this guy is a fiery guy. He's a go-getter. It is an out-of-the-box hire. It's not James Coley, but then again, the other side of the coin is South Carolina has had success with guys like this in recruiting, and we've seen guys like James Coley that are used to being at blue blood schools not be as effective in recruiting, although I thought he would have been a home run hire. So it looks like Mike Fury will wait until tomorrow. So before I let you go, I hear you've been hanging out at Founders Park.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool spot to hang out.
It's great.
Gamecocks 8-1. Only loss was Saturday to Belmont, but they dispatched of Gardner Webb last night with a big inning. I think in the 5th inning. This weekend, Clemson. What have you seen that you've liked from this team, and what have you seen that made you say, well, SEC play is coming. They really need to, hone in on this.
Yeah, I think the pitching has been way, way, way better than I thought, than everyone thought, than probably the coaches thought. I mean, you have 3 guys. Your weekend rotation is 3 guys that started a combined 6 games last year. That doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. But Eli Jones and Dylan Eskew and Roman Kimball have all been fantastic. Eskew had one kind of tough start, but it didn't come until really late in the day. They've all been really, really good. Jones is a legit Friday starter. Kimball, who's coming off Tommy John, is kind of working up the pitch count. So he was at like 40 and then 50, and so he'll keep going up and up. And then you got a freshman, Eddie Copper, who's doing these Tuesday night games, and he's improving every week, which is a nice, because you can win some of those Tuesday games and then also have him for the weekend. This is also without Matthew Becker, who started a decent amount of games last year, who's injured right now. So their pitching far exceeds exactly where we thought. The hitting, I think, is a little interesting because they show it some of these games. I mean, last night you have a big 5th inning. On Sunday, Cole Messina, the catcher, hits his first 2 home runs of the year. There's another home run by the I think it's UNC Greensboro or one of those, transfer Kennedy Jones, whose brother plays football at Clemson, hits a leadoff home run. So they've had these little shots of power, but in some of these games, it's like they'll have one big inning, just one big inning, and then nothing else doing for the rest of the game. And I don't know. I think it's just something that we got to keep monitoring, because their offenses can be a little hit or miss. And I think really it's all dependent on, if they're drawing walks. You can kind of see it. I mean, yesterday they drew like 10, 11 walks. They're just getting guys on. They had a 7-run inning, had like 2 or 3 hits. You're just putting people on, and then it's getting the pitchers flustered. And man, that lineup can get so deep at times. The other thing I thought was interesting is we got to watch their defense a little bit. I mean, there are some of these games, like, they're not losing games because of their defense, but I mean, they're losing runs because of their defense. Just silly errors in the field, pass ground balls, missing cutoff men, things like that. I mean, it was cleaned up a lot on Tuesday, but that's something just kind of watch for in the Clemson series. And as they get into SEC play, I'm going to kind of look for it of like, okay, did this team really turn the corner as far as its defense, or is it kind of the same old?
So Gamecocks will get the Friday game at home. It'll be their 10th straight game. They basically get another home game at Segra Park on Saturday before going to Clemson on Sunday. And I mean, this is a big series. I mean, as far as the fans go, you're judged on two things at South Carolina. Do you beat Clemson, and what do you do in the postseason?
Yeah.
That is how you are judged at South Carolina. And so this will be an interesting series. South Carolina will certainly need, a strong outing from Eli Jones, and they'll need to keep the bats hot this weekend against the Tigers. So, hey, great stuff. Can't thank you for being with us. What you got coming up on GoGamecocks.com?
Yeah, off today. I'll be at the first two games of the Clemson series. We'll have another guy in Clemson, and then kind of trying to monitor Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette at the NFL Combine this weekend. I'm excited to see what people are saying about them, how they perform, how they run. So we'll have all that stuff.
All right, great stuff, Jordan. Can't thank you enough for being with us, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road, and I'll be right back. And I am back. And so that Louisville game I was talking about was in 1988. And I Googled a little bit about that. I can find it here somewhere. Well, anyway, South Carolina had like a 13-point lead with a minute and a half to go. A fight ensued between my guy, Daryl Martin. We were in classes together. And nervous Purvis Ellison, who wound up being the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So they got separated. Martin hit Smith in the eye. The benches emptied. During the fight, a fan, I won't give his name or even his username, he hit one of Louisville's players behind the bench. Others took swings at each other. It took about 10 minutes to restore order. And South Carolina was called for 3 technical fouls, which meant Felton was ejected. Okay, Daryl Martin and Terry Gould from South Carolina were thrown out, as was Smith and Crook of Louisville. Louisville hit 6 of their 8 free throws. Perry Dozier, who had had a career-high 34 points in the game, this is really what cost the Gamecocks game. He only hit 1 of the 4 technicals. If he hits like 3 or 4, even 2 of 4, the Gamecocks win. So the lead dropped to 73-67. Louisville hit a 3, and then Craig Hawley hit a 33-foot buzzer beater. The game ended up tied at 74, and Louisville won it in double overtime. And that guy behind the bench who took a swing at a Louisville player is a member of the bar in the state of Georgia and is a great Gamecock. And so is his son. So huge game tonight for South Carolina. We'll be back to talk about that game. And we'll see what happens with the wide receivers coach. Again, all signs point to Mike Fury being the choice, not Nick Fury, but Mike Fury. And Dale McGee has hired Jim Chaney to be his offensive coordinator and Kevin Shearer to be his defensive coordinator at Georgia State. They must really be putting out some cheese for him to be able to go and hire dudes like that. All right, special thanks to Jordan Kaye. Special thanks to WJM41, Craig, and everybody else for being on the show with us live. Special shout out to BP Skinner Clothiers, and special shout out to my good friend Chris Payne, the owner-operator of Nana's Porch, who is just one of the best dudes on the planet. So until tomorrow, this is Keith Alsep. Well, actually, until tonight, the Garnet and Black Town Hall for our VIP patrons will be tonight. It's a live Zoom call every Wednesday during baseball season. After baseball, we generally have it on Tuesday nights, particularly during football. It's a 60-minute Zoom call. It's interactive. You can ask questions. We have a chat going. You can make comments, ask questions. Then we shut it down at about an hour. And usually the 70 or 80 people that are in the Zoom call, we have had up to 100 people, which is my max that the room will hold. We go to overtime, which is unrecorded, where the real scoop gets dropped. So, look, I got to be honest. If you don't even listen to the podcast Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, just the weekly Zoom calls is worth the $7.99 a month to be a VIP subscriber. During football season, you also get the morning after podcast on Sundays. Sometimes we'll do a Sunday night show when there's a lot of stuff going on over the weekend for VIP subscribers. So look us up on patreon.com/Gamecock Pod Daily. Follow me on Twitter at Kaye Alsep. Follow the show on Twitter at Gamecock Pod. Go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. You can get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Rate us 5 stars. Certainly do appreciate everybody for being with us live and that will listen to this. And I can't wait till tonight, the Garnet and Black Town Hall, which will lead into the Texas A&M game. And then we'll have some spring previews and talk about men's and women's basketball, as well as the Gamecocks are at Texas A&M tonight. The women are at Arkansas tomorrow night, and then a huge series for Mark Kingston and company this weekend against Clemson. So until next time, this is Keith Alsep. Go Gamecocks, and God bless you all, and God bless our troops. I'm out of here.